Hey, welcome to the first series review. You, of course, are watching the Blue Horse Collective, and I am, as always, your Master and Commander Blue Horse. The first series review that I am doing is on one of my all-time favorite anime series, Cowboy Bebop. Now, this series has been acclaimed a masterpiece, and with good reason. The characters are awesome, they're diverse, the story is, every episode in and of itself is of quality you just don't usually see on TV, much less from, let's face it, a cartoon. The settings, the music, which you can probably hear in the background here, I've got it playing right now. Everything about this was about setting up I hate to reuse a term, but it's a variety for the experience, both as far as the texture, the color, the feel of the show at all times. Everywhere they go, even though you get an overall theme of what this world is, which is more or less post-apocalyptic, sci-fi, space opera, basically. But at the same time, as they meet the different people, as they go to the different places that these things happen, even though it's in space, it's not that generic cardboard cutout feel. Everything's diverse, everything's unique, everything has its own personality. And they've just done a masterful job of... Sorry, song came on here. They've done a masterful job at being able to create what feels like a very solid world. And by that I mean that at no point do you feel like you're seeing the same old stuff. Even though they might be going to Mars for the 10th time, being as that's the central hub of everything. I'll get to that in a minute. Each time they go to a new neighborhood, a new settlement, a new colony, you can tell it's got its own unique culture just by the way it's able to present it. And it's all those subtle things, those attentions to detail that make it work. Now, real quick, I'm going to cheat and bring up my moderate amount of notes here. Quick history on that. As far as the series itself, it was based on the 1998 manga by Sunrise, directed by, and I hope I get these names right, they're in Japanese. I'm probably going to butcher them, so I'm sorry about that. But Shinichiro Watanabe and the screenwriter Keiko Nanamoto, basically their work is unbelievable. These guys have credits on other big ones such as Macross Plus, as being one of the first ones that comes to my mind. In and of itself, it's just like a work of art. And really, honestly, especially with the older animes like this, and my buddy Larry Williams of OAW, he's covered this so many times and said it over and over. But back when it was about the story as much as the art, these were exactly that. They were masterpieces. They were works of art. There was so much to them. Visually alone, you can be deaf and not have any idea what's being said, have no idea about the music. You're going to appreciate what you're seeing. And the same thing could be said that if you're sitting there with a blindfold and all you can hear is the dialogue and the music, it's still going to hold your interest. You don't need the visual, because that in of itself is good enough. It could be a radio show and hold your interest. So you've got both of them together. Yeah, no wonder the old animes like this were such big hits. How could they not be? There is so much attention to what's going to make this quality. We have to have the quality voice acting, the quality music. We got to have quality plot. We have to have quality pacing. Nothing was wasted, and Cowboy Bebop has been at the top of every list for top series, top animes and everything of its time. And, it's been even critically acclaimed, award-winning as far as the quality. But anyway, I'm starting to get redundant. So in the sake of quality and pacing, I'm going to move on. Basically, the series takes place in and around the year 2071. Now, quick bit of history in this world is to understand that outer space has been made 100% accessible, okay, to the public by the use of what they call hyperspace gates. Kind of like Stargates, if you're familiar with that series, in that they create a wormhole and quickly takes you from one part of the galaxy to the other. Not exactly a teleportation, there is a traveling to it, but it's made so much shorter by the process that, of course, everything's just right there. It's a day's drive or flight, whatever you want to call it. Now in 2022, they're experimenting with some of the first trials with this technology, and there was a huge accident, and during the use of one of these gates, it pretty much destroyed Earth's moon. So now you have this huge debris field surrounding Earth, and these huge asteroids are constantly pummeling the Earth. It's basically uninhabitable. Most people have left it, and with good reason. Matter of fact, there's a part later on when they're referring to the fact they might have to go to Earth, and Spike even goes, "What? That dump? Why would we want to go there?" But, not to linger too much on something that really doesn't matter. It's just amusing to those who are familiar with the series and will remember that. Anyway, Earth is being constantly bombarded by basically pieces of the moon. So people have gone out and settled the other inner planets. And the asteroid belt, and there are many, many, many settlements on the moons of Jupiter, especially Ganymede, which is a place they go to often. The main, I guess, central location for civilization, as it's known in this story, is Mars, which was one of the first planets that was colonized and made habitable. So you see them going back and forth to there a lot. But there's also, wars on all these planets as people were laying claim and everything else. I seem to remember there's quite a bit in the way of a war on Venus, as far as, I don't know if it was so much a territorial war. It doesn't really touch on it in the show, but it is made mention of and referenced. Specifically in one of my favorite episodes, which was a two-part, Jupiter Jazz. I'll get to that later. But anyway, it's the survivors of the world have been basically scattered throughout the inner planets, is basically what I'm getting to. So civilization as we know it has been broken up. This is very much one of the reasons why it's so appropriate that they use the themes of the Old West. It's basically that. All of a sudden there's all this massive, massive stretch of frontier that everyone's settling on, and there's no true central government yet capable of holding it all together. So naturally you have a lot in the way of crime, outlaws, and by necessity, since the one thing being a consequence of the other. Since the central government isn't able to hold a real true control over everything, the crime syndicates have been able to rise to power and have used their force, their influence to keep it that way and to make themselves more powerful. Because of that, there's been a bounty hunter system put in place. Basically, the bounty hunters, often referred to as cowboys, they log on to the net, they see the list of jobs that are available, and it's like, well, okay, we're going to go after this guy, and he's worth 100,000 wulong, which is the currency at the time. And that's how law enforcement is done. It's not so much in the way of lynch mobs, but it's like, hey, go grab the guy, capture him, bring him in, turn him in for the fee, and there you go. And that, for the most part, is how justice is dealt out. That brings me more or less into the characters in the series. First one that we come across is Jet Black. He's an ex-cop, basically, for, you know, the attempted centralized government. And I'm making it sound like it doesn't exist. It does. But its power is so limited that it's not able to handle how far out people are spread out. I mean, you're thinking about this. People are spread out by light years now, excuse me, rather than miles. You know, think about how difficult it would be for one government to take care of everyone on the earth. You know, frankly, I hope that never happens, but, you know, assuming. That would be almost impossible. Now imagine if it's spread out over all of space. Okay, now it's become self-explanatory, right? Anyway, he was an ex-cop. He got so frustrated with the corruption, the red tape, and everything else that he left, he became a bounty hunter. As a matter of fact, he's the captain and the owner of the starship that is central in the story that they all live on, called the Bebop. The other character is his partner, Spike Spiegel. He is an ex-syndicate enforcer who left the syndicate and is more or less trying to go on the straight and narrow. And you know, poor old Spike. He just, I feel like, yeah, he brings a lot of it on himself, but at the same time, you can tell he doesn't adjust to it well. He was very much a man of action who's trying to become a, well, you know, I don't even want to say a man of peace, but he's trying to live the straight and narrow, and it doesn't exactly agree with him, so he kind of finds himself more or less resigning to the fact that it's like, well, you know, when I'm not bored, I'm getting in trouble, so I might as well stay bored. At least that was my own personal impression. But, you know, he's a Jeet Kune Do master. He oozes cool. Let's say that. He's a fun character. I loved watching him on this series. The third one that you come across is a woman by the name of Faye Valentine. She has a history we don't even find out about until, I think, the 4th or 5th season. Long and the short of it, she was in a horrible, horrible shuttle accident when she was, well, she's still young, but understand the reference here. Been decades ago, alright? She was injured so bad that they said, hey, we can't do anything for you, but we'll cryogenically freeze you, and then when we're able to heal you, we'll bring you back, we'll do what we have then, because we'll have the technology, we can make you bigger, stronger, faster, whatever. No, not exactly that, but we'll make you feel better. Anyway, once she's brought back, she has amnesia, doesn't even remember really what's going on, and then she's presented with the bills of how much her expenses are going to be. On top of that, there's some other history that goes on that makes her debt even worse, and basically she becomes a fugitive running away from her debt so that she doesn't go to prison, and turns to gambling and everything else to try to make money quick in the hope that, well, if I can make enough money to pay them back for everything and I can just show up with it, then maybe everything will be okay. But she, of course, winds up spending most of her time running away from the law, attracts the attention of the cowboys, and, well, it goes on from there. They meet up, she becomes part of the crew. On and off. Complicated. You'll have to see. The next two characters we come across are Ein, who is a Welsh corgi who was genetically modified in a lab and has human intelligence. Ein turns into a real source of amusement through the series and actually saves the day a few times. It's hilarious. Along with Ein comes Ed, or Edward, who is a girl. Don't ask. It's one of those quirky things about the show. But she is a genius and a hacker, becomes invaluable to the crew as far as tracking these people down, and just turns into a really fun character to watch. Two other characters that must be name before I cut off this first segment of the review is Vicious, who was another member of the Red Dragon Syndicate at the time when Spike was. Matter of fact, later on you see more than implied that they were partners in crime, I guess you'd say. They definitely worked together, and looks like they worked together quite well doing what they did. But now there is a rivalry. And even though, yeah, there's kind of a love triangle thing going on with Julia, who's the next character I'm going to mention briefly. But I think that there is much deeper than that, more of a sense of betrayal for Spike having left the Syndicate when that was their life. And there's a lot of other stuff tied in with that, and I really don't want to give away too much because you really need to go see the series and not have too much given away for you. And of course, all this centers around a love interest of Spike, who is Julia, and it's only implied early on, and then the storyline involving her really explodes towards the end of the 4th season, leading into the final and 5th, where he really starts having the flashbacks and referencing and everything about how basically they were both going to leave the Syndicate, run away together, be in love. You know, it's a wonderful love story. And then, of course, things unfold as they do, and it turns into a very unresolved issue for Spike. And I think a driving force behind his character in that it's one of the things that's driven him throughout the series, and it becomes more and more apparent as it goes on. As far as Julia herself, she's left pretty much an enigma. There's not a lot of elaboration on her, at least nothing that I want to give away just yet, but definitely a neat storyline. I'm not big on the love triangle kind of thing, but this was one that was done in such a fashion that it remained interesting simply because it remained a mystery. There's always a lingering question, no matter what question they answered. It always seemed to lead to 2 more, but done in such a way that it didn't distract from the rest of the story. So it made it interesting. I'm going to go ahead and cut the video off here. There will be a quick segue, and then the next part. I'm going to try to start keeping these videos smaller so that there's not the audio problems I've had before. So I'm going to cut it off there, and then I'll start getting into my favorites and my dislikes about it. Okay, so this part's going to start the section where I'm going to talk about my favorite things about the series, the things I didn't like. First off, I mean, I'm sure it's obvious by now that I love the way this thing was written, it was paced, the way it was directed, the imagery, the art. Everything about this just gave the series, I hate to keep reusing this word, but it gave it a texture you just do not see anywhere in media for the most part these days. So it was a real refreshing thing for me to find at the time when I first came across it, which I believe was, I think I saw this for the first time around 2002. I came across it by accident at work one day. It just happened to be playing, well, you know, we won't go into that. But anyway, it was a fellow I was working with that introduced me to it, however indirectly, and I was hooked on it ever since. I still wind up watching it. It airs on Adult Swim a lot, so there's a good way to check it out. Cartoon Network, check it. But I think my favorite character out of all these, and it's hard to pick one. It's hard because they're all so good. But my favorite out of the main crew would have to be Jet Black. And he's just such an interesting character. He's that reluctant father figure, but you can tell that he's just all the time looking at everyone else around him, from Spike, especially Faye, not to mention Ed. And you can tell that there's sometimes where he's sitting there saying, okay, here's what we're going to do. This is what we need to do. This is the only thing that makes sense. Trust me, I'm the old fart. I know best. Everyone goes, yeah, that's nice. We're going to go do this. Is that what? You're not listening to me. And you'll always see him do this. Ugh. And you can see it written in his face. There's so much in the art with the expressions on these characters, but especially him, and he said, why do I bother with these damn kids? And especially now that I am a father, I'm relating to this character even more, because God bless him, my son Connor, he'll be doing something. I'll go, Connor, don't do that. You're going to get hurt. Connor, don't do that. I told you you were going to get hurt. Why don't you listen to me? And I've actually said this several times on comments on Larry Williams' Thundercats reviews, where not only does the character Panthro visually remind you so much of Jet Black, but at this point, it's like, yeah, he's got the prosthetic robotic arms. His voice is more or less the same. His mannerisms are the same. Let's face it, Panthro's Jet Black. But I just can't help it. I mean, it's that guy who has to constantly step back and go, I know I shouldn't be the smartest person here. What's going on? Why am I stuck with you people? Why do I care? Why don't I just leave? And then realizes he just can't, but I don't know. He brings a flavor to the entire thing. He's the authority that is ignored, and that is an archetype that I always get such amusement out of. Makes me think of Bill Cosby's special from so long ago, Myself, where he's sitting there talking about kids are all brain damaged. And you can tell that's what's going through his mind constantly, especially where Spike's concerned. But I'm going to move on. I think my favorite bounty, as far as people they were going after in this show, because that was a big theme, and the great part about it, even though that was a big part of the story, it was used as a vehicle for the story. The main action in these episodes was centered around a way to tell the story of what was going on with the characters, rather than being action for action's sake, which is what we see in a lot of these animes now, and that's a shame. I mean, yeah, action has its point. It's always nice to have what I call a fun episode inserted once in a while, but when that becomes the only thing that you are working towards, it's sad. This series did it correctly. You had action, you had something different going on every week, every episode, but it was a vehicle to show, here is what's going on in these characters' lives right now. And this is going to be the thing that brings out this theme and this character on this episode. So, it can be just for the fact of something triggers a memory for Faye, or something triggers a flashback for Jet or for Spike. It could be something that in some convoluted way brings out more details about Ed's past, because no one can make sense of anything that girl says and anything he learns by accident, but everything served a purpose, and it was a greater purpose than simply being what it was for itself. Larry, that one was for you. As far as my favorite bounty, to get back to the original thing, had to be a character by the name of Grin, who was on the episode Jupiter Jazz, which is also my #1 favorite episode of the series. Basically, they're given a bounty to go after this individual, and in the midst of everything that's going on, they find out this guy has been in league with Vicious before during one of the wars on Venus, and they were actually brothers in arms. I don't want to give away too much, so I'm trying to be real careful here what I say, but basically Grin is a jazz saxophonist in one of the local bars. I can't remember what it was called, as the Blue Note or something like that. But anyway, there's this beacon signal being sent out that Ed comes across one day, and it simply says Julia. Well, that sets Spike into a frenzy, and he just, out the door, there he goes. There's Jet going, "Wait, stupid kids, where are you going?" And that leads into the whole thing. Faye Valentine, of all people, winds up being the one that finds Grin, mistakes Grin for a woman, due to, we can assume it's kind of like an Agent Orange kind of thing, where he has been genetically changed somehow into a woman. And throughout the course of things, we find out that Grin is this person who they've put the bounty on, and then it's all the characters dealing with, well, how are we going to treat this? And all of them having their own conflicts as to why to either take in Grin or let her go. And it's a great episode. It really shows the different sides of what makes up the crew, as far as who's after the money, what can make them give up the thought of, well, there's something more going on here than just us making a few wulong. Let's, show some compassion, or let's not in some cases. And this is one of those episodes that just hit it spot on. Plus, is nothing but backstory for what's been going on with Spike, Julia, and everything else. So it's just really interesting. You get to see some different sides of some of the other characters that you didn't really see up until then. So I guess I kind of covered that episode too. Other favorite characters, there's a group of 3 old men, excuse me, coffee break, because, hey. There's a group of 3 old men that throughout the entire series, they're that Easter egg. You know it's coming up. You don't know when. But it seems like everywhere the Bebop goes, where they're hunting the bounty of the week or whatever, all of a sudden they'll come across these old men. They're usually in the background playing cards or arguing, or, just being senile old men trying to fumble their way through something. And it's delightful the way they do it. It turns out it's like, wait for. It's the old men, they're playing dominoes and they're arguing about such and such. And has almost nothing to do with the storyline, but it's always amusing to see how, in some small way, it ties in. Especially one of the more emotional episodes later on, when you find out one of them's playing chess over the internet with Ed, and that's really interesting. But they're just a refreshing little aspect of the show. The little comic relief that's allowed in every so often. Also, there was Cowboy Andy from another one of my favorite episodes called Cowboy Funk. And he has decided that... Okay, I can't remember. I can't remember if he said his name was Wyatt Earp. I want to say he said his name was Wyatt Earp. He was basically... He was the billionaire playboy who suddenly one day decided, I'm not only going to be a cowboy, I'm going to be a real cowboy. I'll call myself Wyatt Earp. I'm going to have a horse, and I'm going to go bounty hunting. And be the stereotypical singing cowboy. That was going to be his gimmick. And it was just funny to see how he went from that during that episode when they were going after a terrorist by the name of Teddy Bomber, all the way through to the end of how he suddenly decided he was a samurai. So, you just got to see that episode. That was probably one of the funniest things I've ever seen on TV. So those are my 2 favorite characters. Of course, I already covered that Jupiter Jazz was one of my favorite episodes. A 2-part episode, no less. The other one was Ganymede Elegy. This was the one where we saw a backstory on Jet Black. And you get to see more of how his past was when he was the ex-cop. And you get a little bit more insight on his private life. There was a girlfriend that he had at the time, and I want to say her name was Elisa. Basically, she was the girlfriend that left him, and he never got over it. But he goes back to Ganymede, and the story opens up in a weird way where you can tell he's contemplating this old watch. and it's stopped. It's no good. It's ruined, but he's holding on to it all this time like a memento. And it turns into kind of a theme. It kind of reminds me of the chicken feather in Forrest Gump, but when you see it, you'll understand what I mean. In that it's this thing that he's carried all these years. Anyway, they're after a bounty for this one guy, and I believe I have that up here. Let me see. Yeah, after Rent Colonius. I hope I say that right. But anyway, yeah, and it was Elisa that it was. But anyway, he winds up during his travels. He comes across Elisa, and you know they kind of start trying to have a conversation. It doesn't really go the way he wants to, but you can tell he's not really going to let it go. In the meantime, Spike has gotten news of the bounty that's on this new guy, Rent Solanius. Maybe it's Solanius, the way I should be saying this. Anyway, it's for 1,800,000 wulong. So, you know, it's a good-sized bounty. And he's basically going after this guy. He's like, hey, we're here on Gamma Meat anyway. I don't know what Jet's up to, but I'm going to make me some money. And if I do it myself, I don't have to share with anybody. So, kudos for me. In the course of things, you find out that, and spoiler alert here, you find out that Rent is actually Elisa's boyfriend. And then it turns into this whole thing of Spike's trying to catch the guy, Jet's trying to get back Elise. Jet winds up having to get between Spike and Guy, gets in the middle of it, of course, and it turns into this whole thing of it's I don't know if I necessarily want to call it a story arc because it's an independent episode, even though it does have to do with the theme going on with Jet Black for the most part, where it's more and more you see it's him having to let go of his guilt or his shame for his past or whatever decisions he's made and learning to move on for himself. Basically learning how to forgive himself for making mistakes and just move on. You know, before it's too late, because, you know, he's getting up in years. He might not have much longer. It's implied that he might have some health problems coming up on himself, which, you know, hey, the way the man eats and smokes and everything else, it wouldn't be a surprise. But I transgress here. It's just real neat the way they use the theme of the watch at the end to show how he's finally letting go. You know, and says, all right, it's over between us. Good luck. I hope your life works out, and I'm going to move on with mine too. So it's a really neat theme for that episode. Let's see. Of course, the music in this show is unbelievable. For the most part, the music is produced by a group called the Seatbelts, which is a big band jazz type, band out of Japan. Great stuff, and lots of it features the singer Mei Yamami. I hope I'm saying that right. Frankly, I want this soundtrack. I think there's a couple of them out there. I just need to go dig them up. But if you do nothing else, do a search and find some of this music, especially you've got the opening theme, Tank. There is the Real Folk Blues, which is the ending credits. That one is awesome. Check it out. Matter of fact, those two songs are on ringtones from my phone. I like them so much. There's also another one called Waltz of Venus. What's another? What is that one called? Blue, which was the last song played in the series at the closing, and that was really good. Let's see. That'll pretty much cover that. I'm going to try to keep this moving, keep the video shorter. The one thing that I didn't like about the series, and I'm having to grasp here, and I did like this for reasons that were there, but I think it could have been done away with. But it was an episode called Pierrot Le Faux. And it is basically when Watanabe was talking about when he was coming up with this episode, he was thinking about all the Batman villains, okay? He said, man, what would happen if I were to take all the things with those villains and make them all into one super villain? And who's most like Batman out of the crew? Ooh, I know, Spike. I'm going to pit them against each other. Basically, Spike sees this serial killer, this genetically modified madman, in the act of killing. So, of course, the madman comes after him. And the episode for itself, I can appreciate what they were doing, and it was a break from the main storyline. And frankly, I'll be the first to admit, maybe I didn't like it because it really did creep me out. But this guy is basically indestructible. And, you know, Spike has met his match more or less. And you think, oh, okay, Spike, are you going to make it out of this? And then the way it ends, it was kind of like, oh, well, okay. But overall, I have a hard time with the episode because I didn't feel like it belonged, not just where they placed it in the series, but it just didn't feel like it belonged. I felt like I would have been happier with another story that gave some more background on one of the characters, like Faye, for instance, who I really feel like was left dangling. Ed, even though there wasn't a lot said about her overall in the series, what they did say about her, it resolved it. In fact, all the characters, for the most part, were resolved except for Faye, which was kind of left dangling, even though that was more or less the theme for her. It was loneliness. But anyway, I feel like it was a wasted episode. That's just me. You know, did I like the episode? I did, but I think I would have liked it more as an independent entity rather than being inserted in this series, if that makes sense. You know, and just to go ahead and wrap things up, yeah, I love the way it all ended. Yeah, it was sad, but you know, that's kind of the theme of the whole thing. It's, you know, it's loneliness, it's depression, it's isolation, and this ended that way. And it was every ending for every character seemed appropriate. You know, when something can linger with you long enough to make you upset about it, even years later after having seen it, the writer did a good job. He connected with you emotionally, and they did this well. So, what can I say bad about it? I mean, hey, they did their job. Gosh, I can only hope to get emotional reaction from someone like that one day. So overall, I really like the series. Side note, there has been a lot of talk over the last 4 years of making a live-action film out of this series. And they did confirm that Keanu Reeves, back in 2008, was confirmed to play the role of Spike Spiegel. And I think, hey, perfect, who better? But it was last year, 2011, they sent the script back to rewrite because of budgeting issues. So once again, it's the same old story. Money, money, money. Money's more valuable than time, but time is money. And, you know, they got to make sure that they're going to make it. They don't have enough faith in it to invest the extra money that was being requested. So I'm hoping that we do still get this movie if it's done well. This is one that, as far as a live action show, it'll be make or break. Either it'll be perfect or it'll be trash. And I'm worried about it, but I'm excited about the prospect. And, you know, hey, what else can you do? Anyway, it's been delayed for almost a year now, and there's been nothing else coming up as far as rumors. But, you know, that's the way they did with Spider-Man, X-Men, and so many others for so many years, too. And look at the success those had. Overall, out of 5 stars, I've got to give this one 5 stars. It is a great series. I highly recommend it. I would say this was appropriate for, you know, adolescents up. All the violence that's in it is very censored. It's done in a classy kind of way where even if you do see blood, it's at this point less than what you see on daytime TV. It's safe. Does it have some adult themes? Definitely, but it's nothing that a teenager isn't dealing with anyway. So, you know, if you're worried, if you're a parent watching this to see if it's a good one for your teenagers, let them watch it. Watch it with them. You'll have fun too. It is a deep enough story that you won't be bored. So definitely check it out. That's going to wrap it up for now. I'm going to dedicate this one to OAW. I am a loyal fan and member of the AOW Nation, or whatever you want to call it. Larry, I know you said you're going to do a review on Cowboy Bebop, and we wound up doing the Q&A instead. That's great. I loved it. I love what you do. So as a member of the OAW family, I'm making this sacrifice for you and doing the review for you. Feel free to fill in the gaps and tell me how horribly I did. But hey, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope everyone enjoyed it. And this wraps up my first series review here on the Blue Horse Collective. I will see you